a blind man, the son of Timaeus, sat by the roadside begging. On hearing that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to cry out and say, "Jesus, Son of David, have pity on me." And many rebuked him, telling him to be quiet. But he kept calling out all the more, "Son of David, have pity on me." Jesus stopped and said, "Call him." So they called the blind man, saying to him, "Take courage, get up. Jesus is calling you." He threw aside his cloak, sprang up, and came to Jesus. Jesus said to him in reply, "What do you want me to do for you?" The blind man replied to him, "Master, I want to see." Jesus told him, "Go on your way, your faith has saved you." Immediately, he received his sight and followed him on the way. The Gospel of the Lord. Look down and get the big picture. Get the big picture. Once you land, everything you can see is the runway and hangars. But when you're up high, you get the big picture. I just want to give you the big picture of Mark's Gospel. This is the way Mark wrote his Gospel. Okay, come on up here for 1 minute, and then 2 props. Here, 2 here. Yeah, both of you. No. 2 points. Come on up here. Come on up here. No, come up here. No, you can just stand there for 1 minute. Patrick, you can just stand there for 1 minute, okay? You guys going to help me out? Well, okay, listen. When St. Mark wrote his Gospel, he broke it into 3 sections, okay? The first section of St. Mark's Gospel has Jesus up in Galilee. That's where he begins his public ministry. The last section of Mark's Gospel has Jesus in Jerusalem, the city of Jerusalem, where he's killed and he's raised from the dead. And then the middle section is Jesus on a journey from Galilee to Jerusalem. Okay? And for the past 3 months, all of the Gospels that we've heard at Mass on Sunday have been taken from this section. Okay. This is what Mark does to let you know when one section begins and another one ends. When Jesus begins to leave Galilee and begin this journey, he heals a blind man. But it's a kind of a peculiar type of miracle. It happens gradually. This is very rare. Jesus says a prayer for this blind guy, and then Jesus says, "Can you see?" He says, "Well, I can, but not perfectly. I can see people, but they look like they're walking trees." Jesus says, "I have to do a little bit more work." So Jesus comes back and heals them completely. Okay, it takes him 2 times. When Mark is going to complete this section and begin the next one, Mark has Jesus healing another blind man. But now this one's different. When Jesus heals this person, he's healed immediately. And for Mark, seeing is a metaphor for understanding Jesus. Seeing is a metaphor for understanding Jesus. When Jesus begins this journey, people really don't understand him. They don't really see him. Okay? And on this journey, Jesus is mostly teaching him that he's going to suffer in Jerusalem. He just keeps teaching him this over and over and over again. So that by the time they get to the city of Jericho, and this miracle takes place, the disciples are starting to see a little bit who Jesus is. But there's still a lot of work to be done. Okay, fellas, you can go back. Thank you. Little props there. Okay, so let's talk about this story today with Bartimaeus. So Jesus is leaving the city of Jericho. This is the last place he's on the journey before he goes into Jerusalem. He's in the city of Jericho. He's leaving, and there's a sizable crowd, and there's the disciples. Okay? And we're told that in the gutter, in the curbside, there's this man called Bartimaeus, and he's blind. He's Bartimaeus because his dad's name is Timaeus. Bartimaeus, Bart means son. Well, you know, he finds out it's Jesus. And he's saying, this is my best chance ever. This will never come again. So Bartimaeus says, Jesus, son of David, have pity on me. Notice what happens. His followers, the disciples and the crowd, they tell him to shut up. They said, be quiet, be silent. You know, it's like, he's ours. We don't have enough of him to go around. You're just a blind beggar, Bartimaeus. You stay there and leave us alone. With friends like this, Jesus doesn't need enemies. Well, you know, this gets Jesus mad. Mark tells us he stops. Jesus never stops in Mark's gospel. He is always on the run. He's a man of action, and he stops. And now he rebukes the crowd who's following him and his followers. He says to them, call him over. Don't shush him away. Don't tell him to be quiet. Call him over. Jesus is saying, I've come for people like that. And you're keeping them away from me? Let's be careful here. Sometimes we're like that. Sometimes our church is like that. Sometimes instead of making it easy for people who are far from God to come to Jesus, we make it hard for people who are away from God to come to Jesus. Jesus was never hard on people far from him. Once people came to him and started to understand him, for them he started to raise the bar. And this is what Pope Francis is saying. We need to be careful. Thanks for that little popcorn drill. So Pope Francis is saying we have to be careful. People are far from God. We have to make it easy for people to discover Jesus. Anyway, Bartimaeus comes to Jesus. And, so they tell him to be quiet. He's persistent. He says, no way. He says, even louder, Jesus, son of David, have pity on me. Then Jesus stops. He says, roll over. What does he do? He throws all his clothes, comes over him. And Jesus says to him, what do you want me to do for you? There he is. He just says, Master, I want to see. I want to see the sun coming up over the mountains. I want to see those things people call the stars on a pitch black night. I want to see the guy who gives me a couple of coins every Friday afternoon. I want to see the temple in Jerusalem that everybody's talking about. And Bartimaeus, you can imagine him saying, no, and Jesus, I want to see you. I've heard such great stories about you. I want to see you. Master, I want to see you. Notice what Jesus does? When Jesus never takes the credit for himself. Jesus says, Bartimaeus, for a blind beggar, you go on faith. Bartimaeus, your faith is going to heal you. Your faith has saved you. And then he received his sight immediately. Not like the first one. Now, this is the best part of the story. Jesus had said to him, receive your sight and go on your way. Bartimaeus could have done what a lot of people did in Jesus' life. They got that miracle, and then they went their own way. They just kind of used Jesus. Mark tells us that he received his sight immediately, and he followed him on the way. He became his disciple and went to Jerusalem. Okay, Mark is a really kind of downer of the gospel. Not many people get it in Mark's gospel. Even Jesus' disciples don't get it. But Bartimaeus does. And he's one of the few bright spots in St. Mark's gospel. And he's like an ideal disciple. He's an ideal disciple. So, if I had to summarize the gospel today, it would be that Bartimaeus is an ideal disciple in Mark's gospel. Okay? That's a nice response service I'll never seen. My soul reaches, however it goes. Oh, yeah, there it is. Sorry. My soul is thirsting for you, O Lord, thirsting for you, my God. My soul is thirsting for you, O Lord, thirsting for you, my God. Thirsting for you, my God. Sing. My soul is thirsting for you, O Lord, thirsting for you, my God. My soul is thirsting for you, O Lord, thirsting for you, my God. Thirsting for you, my God. Okay, so what did we do this week to put the gospel we just heard into practice? It's nice to have heard that story. But then what are we going to do this week because of it? St. Mark included that story because there's a little bit of Bartimaeus in all of us. And Mark wanted to encourage his readers that they're a little bit like Bartimaeus. They get it. And I'm just going to, I'm doing this in all cases. I'm encouraging everybody to acknowledge and to be grateful for the way that you are a disciple of Christ. Acknowledge it, and then be grateful for the ways that you are a disciple of Christ. Now notice, okay, we all still have a long way to go. This is obvious. None of us are perfect. We won't be in this life. We all have a long way to go. But this is what I'm not encouraging people to do this week. I'm not saying, oh, we still have to go so much further. What I'm encouraging people to do is look back and see how far you've come. Where were we 10 years ago or 20 years ago in the big journey? And so what we need to do is, instead of determining that we're going to go further this week, I'm just asking people to look back and to be grateful, to acknowledge that you're disciples of Jesus Christ, and be grateful for that. Bartimaeus knew he needed Jesus. And I'm sure all of us, sometime in our lives, have called out to God and just said, God, I need you. It could have been when we got a bad prognosis. It could have been when we had troubles with our kids. It could have been when we lost a job or didn't know if we could do the mortgage payment. But I'm sure there's times in all of our lives, like Bartimaeus, we just said, Jesus, I need you to come. Okay? But Bartimaeus is persistent. They're telling him to be quiet. He's just getting louder and louder. And I'm sure there's times in all of your lives, and in my life too, where we were persistent and we didn't give up. It would be easy sometimes just to give up in the church. Or it would be easy to give up going to church on Sunday. Or it would be easy just to blow off the teachings of Christ. But, you stayed with me. So be grateful for that. Acknowledge that. Bartimaeus gives up things. When he hears Jesus call him, we're told he throws away his cloak and he comes to Jesus. And it's like he doesn't have a whole lot. And so, I'm sure all of you have given up things to be faithful to your Lord Jesus and to the church. Maybe there are things like this, but maybe it's other things like promotions. That you decide, you know what? It's better that I make this decision for my faith and my family. So like that. And then, Bartimaeus does follow Jesus on the road. And all of us, to some degree, are following the Lord Jesus Christ. We're his disciples. And we're becoming intentional disciples. So just acknowledge that in your life and be grateful and thank God for it. I think if we do that, if we acknowledge our discipleship and be grateful for it,